Welcome to a Friday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. Bill, Happy New Year. Can we still do Happy New Year? We haven't seen each other yet. We can do it, right?
Larry David gave us a 3-day window, if I remember that episode properly. So I think we are just in the threshold. We can still do it. Happy New Year, John.
Safely ensconced in the Happy New Year window. Fantastic. All right. Later in the show, we're going to do who replaces Luka Doncic in the MVP conversation now that he won't be eligible for awards. We have the first fan returns on All-Star voting. We'll discuss that. Some of them hilariously wrong. We'll do some New Year's resolutions and then team of the night. But first, Bill, where else to start but Jimmy Butler versus the Miami Heat is heating up. An ESPN report from last night says that Jimmy indicated, interesting word there, to the Heat, that he wants to be traded. He's open to playing anywhere but Miami. This comes after previous reports, including on Christmas Day, that he was open to going to 4 teams, the Mavs, Rockets, Warriors, and Suns. Evidently now, anybody but the Miami Heat will do. Pat Riley, of course, issued a statement the day afterwards saying they're not going to trade him. Now, Jimmy does not sound happy here, Bill. Last night, he complained about his role and about being a decoy. Here's his reaction after a loss to the Pacers at home on Thursday night.
What do I want to see happen? I want to see me get my joy back from playing basketball. And wherever that may be, we'll find out here pretty soon. But I want to get my joy back. I'm happy here, off the court. But I want to be back to somewhat dominant. I want to hoop. And I want to help this team win. Right now, I'm not doing that.
Can you get your joy back here on the court?
Probably not.
Oof, wants his joy back wherever that may be. Bill, what have you heard on this?
Yeah, that's about as ugly as my internet connection is right now, John.
All right, Bill's having some tech.
To Heat sources, I'm
Go ahead, Bill. You back?
So talking to Heat sources, what I'm told is despite the fact that Pat Riley recently put out a statement saying Jimmy Butler's not going to be traded, this is something they've been anticipating for several weeks now. They never considered Jimmy Butler, I'm told, untradeable, and they were sure enough that at a minimum these dominoes could fall, and it was certainly possible enough to get to this point that they've already had internal conversations about what they would want in return. That include pieces right now that can allow them to continue to be a contender. I know that seems silly, but they see themselves as NBA championship contenders. They will point out anytime you talk to them that they've made 3 of the last 5 NBA Eastern Conference Finals and 2 of the last 5 NBA Finals. And so this is something that they thought was going to happen. And it's sort of in follow-up conversations. Why is the guy that runs basketball operations, Pat Riley, out there making statements that it wasn't going to happen? And basically the answer I got, John, is you've got a very stubborn person in Pat Riley and a very stubborn person in Jimmy Butler. There's a history of Jimmy Butler not getting along with some of the teams he's played for at the end. And so the sense in the organization is these are 2 stubborn guys, 2 competitors who have maybe hit a point where despite how well they've worked together the last many years, it's just reached the point where a divorce, maybe it'll be amicable, John, makes the most sense.
I don't think that we're headed towards amicable. I think we left amicable way behind us here, Bill, because these 2 guys, as you mentioned, are really strong personalities, and they've decided to engage in an incredibly public and messy game of chicken. You have Pat Riley on the day after Christmas saying, hey, we don't normally issue statements on this kind of thing, but we're going to issue a statement, and we're not going to trade Jimmy Butler, which, okay, I understand that he's trying to gain some leverage back here, but would Pat Riley really be willing to cut off his nose to spite his face on a situation where obviously Jimmy is digging in here? He's not going to play the good soldier. He definitely wants out. I think it would behoove both sides to just part company and go their separate ways, and the Heat especially to get a fresh start and get whatever you can for Jimmy Butler, because Jimmy Butler, he's got a player option next year for $52.5 million. And I think that the calculus on the Heat standpoint is, would Jimmy Butler really turn down that much money? And my sense of Jimmy Butler and what he's doing here right now is yes, Jimmy Butler is that guy. He's the kind of guy who would decide, you know what? I just want out and I'll take whatever I can get. Now, the question is, if he does go that route, which teams would even be willing to pay him and which teams could pay him? Because the list gets pretty thin pretty fast, Bill.
Yeah, look, you're right. It is a game of chicken, and I think it's a game of leverage here. I think Jimmy Butler understands he's probably going to be now and the trade deadline. It's not going to be the reported for those teams. He is open, and Butler said this yesterday, to playing anywhere else, which is a way of saying, get me the hell out of Miami. It's also a way of saying to Miami, I understand that internally you've decided if you're going to move me, you've got to get the best deal possible. So a team, you're right, a team like the Rockets makes sense. A team like, I think the Warriors make sense. The question becomes, what can Houston send back now that the Heat convince themselves they're a contender? Talking to folks in that Heat organization, and they have not specifically said this trade they would do, but I get the sense that an Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga trade, where those are the frameworks of a deal, the Heat might be able to squint and convince themselves, because their belief, John, is if they can be a top 6 team, this is what they've told me, if they can be in the top 6, they think that they can make a run to an NBA Finals this year. And they have told me they think they are good enough to beat the Boston Celtics. You may think that's ridiculous. I may or may not think that's ridiculous. That's their view. And so, but their perspective is if they can get enough to be a top 6 team and avoid what they view as the Russian roulette as the play-in tournament, that can work if they move on from Jimmy Butler. That's been their internal deliberation. So I think you're right. I think a trade probably happens. And I think it's some combination of players. And again, I think Wiggins and Kuminga might be the framework of a deal where the Heat say, we feel like we can plug this in with our culture and our head coach and our other pieces and at least compete enough to have a chance in the Eastern Conference.
I think the Warriors, of the teams that have been mentioned between the Suns, the Warriors, the Rockets, and the Mavs, the Warriors makes the most sense from what can they send back. Kuminga would get his own spot to be the star and the play, you throw in Wiggins for salary matching purposes. And then Jimmy Butler, being absorbed into how things are operated in Golden State makes a lot of sense. We've gone through the other teams, the Suns, it's next to impossible because you'd have to unplug KD, not going to happen. Booker, not going to happen. Or Beal would have to waive his no trade clause. And then the Rockets, I like the Rockets because they have the most to offer. They've got a ton of cap space, but the question is, do they want to mess with their chemistry right now? They're already a really good team, and his 35-year-old Jimmy Butler, who's been sort of a malcontent and likes to be the main guy, is he just going to go? I mean, he's definitely an Ime Udoka kind of player, but at this stage in his career, do you want to mess with a good thing? So yeah, I like Golden State there. If he doesn't get traded though, Bill, and this is, I think, again, what the Heat are kind of betting on here. If they don't trade him, is Jimmy Butler really going to go and say, all right, if you look at the teams with cap space next year or this offseason, the Nets are going to have roughly $60 million. Okay, maybe that's attractive. After that, it's the Wizards are going to have maybe $40 million. Now you're into the Pelicans at $34 million, but only if Brandon Ingram walks. The Hornets at maybe $30 million. Like, these are the teams that he's looking at. Is he really going to gamble on that?
Heat don't think so. I think is the short answer. I think they look at the same list that. But do you want to take that risk? Do you want to risk that Jimmy Butler is, if anybody in the NBA as a superstar is stubborn enough to cut off his nose to spite his face in order just to harm a little bit Pat Riley when they're in conflict, it might be Jimmy Butler. So I'm with you, and I think the Heat are with you that doesn't add up, but there's enough risk there, and there's enough worry about Jimmy being a bit of a wild card that I think, to your point, I think there will be a move because I think each of these teams have some leverage, and that's why I say amicable in the sense I don't think Butler's going to dictate where he goes, but I think it's likely he dictates that he goes somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense for him to go somewhere else. I'm not even sure. I get that Pat Riley doesn't like to be pushed up against a wall and nobody bullies the Heat and nobody pushes them around. Put all of that macho nonsense aside for a second. Do you really want 35-year-old malcontent Jimmy Butler, who's already missed a ton of games? I mean, don't forget that over the first 5 seasons of his career in Miami, he only averaged 58 games a season. He missed the playoffs last year. This season, he's played in 22 of 32, so he's missed a full third of their games. He wants out. I would happily bundle him up and send him to whichever team would give me the best package. Thank you, Jimmy Butler, for your service. It's been real. We're all moving on. And we're going to move on in this segment, too. We're going to take a quick break, and then on the other side, we're going to discuss who replaces Luka Doncic in the top 5 MVP conversation. That's coming up. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Bill's having some slight technical difficulties, so he'll be rejoining us in just a second. But a reminder that you can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review. And then on Spotify, there's a little function there where you can leave us a comment. If you look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode, you can tell us what you think about the show. All right, when Bill returns, we're going to discuss who replaces Luka in the top 5 MVP conversation and in the all-NBA debate, because Luka Doncic was pretty firmly ensconced in the top 5 along with Joker, SGA, Giannis, and Tatum. But because of a calf strain, he's not going to qualify for the 65-game threshold. Womp womp Luka. It'll be the first time in 5 seasons. He made 5 straight first-team All-NBA. That's going to end. So now we discuss who's going to be one of those replacement candidates. You see Ant Edwards there. I don't think he's going to quite make the cut, but there are some really interesting names here, and it's a conversation that Bill and I have had previously, but it's really going to heat up in earnest now. Right at the top of the list, and I think this is a guy that Bill would be excited about, is Victor Wembanyama, who, unless something really goes wrong here for Wemby, he's going to be the defensive player of the year in his second year. He's an absolute, I mean, people call him an alien for a reason. He's absolutely unbelievable at the defensive end, but offensively, we've seen him make huge strides this season. There was a game the other day where he did this up and under dunk where he had his go-go gadget arms and he threw it down and just blew everybody away. It went viral online. Depending on what your sports book of choice is, our friends over at Bet Online have him at plus 6,600 to be the next guy into that conversation, along with Joker, SGA, Giannis, and Tatum. I'm going to throw a different name out there. And believe me, I think Wemby is a really good choice, and he could be the guy that enters the MVP conversation as the 5th guy. I think it's going to be probably more all NBA conversation for him than MVP convo, just because of where the Suns or where the Spurs fall on the NBA standings pecking order. The guy I'm looking at is Karl Anthony Towns. He has been a revelation for the New York Knicks. He's at plus 10,000 to win the MVP, so he's not going to win it. But could he be a top 5 guy like Jalen Brunson was last year? Yeah, I really think he could, because look, the Knicks, 3rd place in the Eastern Conference, just a game back of the Boston Celtics, who are the defending NBA champions. I don't think anybody expected the Knicks to be this good offensively. They're 3rd in offense this year. That 2-man game that he's running with Jalen Brunson really works. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby on the wings, they're getting wide open looks because of how good Karl Anthony Towns has been when paired alongside Jalen Brunson. And also, he's leading the league in rebounding. I mean, look, when he was in Minnesota, he was a very good player. The self-described best shooting big man in NBA history. I'm not sure that's quite true, but it's pretty close. And now we've seen his offensive game absolutely unleashed, and it's kind of surprising because I would have always thought, there was a time before Anthony Edwards came along and before they went and got Rudy Gobert, where the Minnesota Timberwolves were really Karl Anthony Towns' team, and he was kind of unchecked. And now he goes to New York, and I thought, okay, with Tibbs, they're going to rein him in a little bit, and really the opposite has been true. Well, I believe we have Bill back as well. We're going to bring him back. There he is. There's my guy. I'm singing the praises of Karl Anthony Towns over here.
Working suddenly. Let's go.
That's fantastic. We've got it. Live television, the wonders of live television. We're discussing who replaces, as you know, Luka, now that he's not going to make the 65-game threshold. The 2 guys that I was just discussing are the 2 guys that you and I have talked about the most as the candidates who could potentially be in this mix here. Let's start with your guy, Wemby. Plus 6,600, depending on where you're looking around. This could be his time to already be in the MVP convo, Bill.
I love it. As I'm sure you mentioned, as people may know, there are 5 names that go on this MVP, the official MVP ballot. So to be an MVP candidate, you're really one of the top 5 guys that are under consideration. And John, if I was filling my ballot today, I think I'd be really tempted to put Wemby in that 5 spot. And I heard you talking about Cat and how dynamic he's been. And I think there's a higher ceiling for I think Karl Anthony Towns is more likely to win this award than Wemby. But right now, Wemby has almost no help. Obviously, Cat is joining a team that was really good last year and had high expectations. He's amazing, but Brunson was an MVP candidate for me last year. So it's a really interesting race between those 2 guys because they're both exceptional. They've both been huge boosts to those teams. I guess I have a soft spot for Wemby. I want to say because he's so phenomenal. Maybe because you and I were early on the Wemby. You had Wemby as a top 4 player entering this year. So yeah, I think both those guys deserve consideration. Can I toss a 3rd, maybe longer shot name into the mix as well for you as a 5th name on the ballot? He has to get to that 65-game threshold, and he's missed some games already, and he's not the most durable player on earth. And his team isn't exactly setting the world on fire. But I think Kevin Durant and the record when they have KD in Phoenix versus when they don't is the difference is so stark. They are literally the worst team in the NBA when Kevin Durant doesn't play. Doesn't matter they have Devin Booker. Doesn't matter, I guess in theory they thought Bradley Beal, at least when they brought him along, was going to be helpful. KD is literally the difference between that Suns team being very, very competitive or being worse than the Wizards or whoever else you want to point to. And so that expands the list to 5, 6, 7 guys. But if KD can make the required threshold for how many games you have to play, I think he's at least somebody to keep an eye on.
Yeah, he's an interesting candidate here just because of like how when we talk about most valuable player, he's clearly so valuable to the Suns that he makes them a viable professional basketball team when he's out there, and then without him the wheels are just like completely off. They don't even bother trying to put the wheels on. He's plus what 15,000 sorry, to win it all, but he's just behind Cat and AD and Wemby for the replacement candidates here. I do like him a little bit better than AD too, because just like how much he means to that Suns team. I want to go back to the Wemby Cat conversation though, because I think those two guys are the two guys that are closest to being the number 5 on the list. I think what happens here, Bill, because you have a vote here, and we discussed it last year when you were deciding, is it Tatum or is it Brunson? I think what happens here is that we split the vote kind of like what we did last year, where maybe it's a Karl Anthony Towns for the MVP conversation just because of where the Knicks are in the pecking order in terms of the standings, but maybe it's Wemby for all NBA first team, because then it's not so much about, where the Spurs and the standings as, geez, how do you deny how good this kid is?
And I did that last year. If memory serves, I put Brunson at 5 on that ballot, but Tatum, who was not on my ballot, at all NBA, and Brunson, I think, fell down. I'm trying to remember how that went.
I think that's what you did, yeah.
It's interesting because the Cat conversation to me is very similar to why you and I as well have dismissed AD maybe a little quickly. Some of it for me is, look, the Lakers are in a very different position than the Knicks in terms of how I think they're viewed and where they're likely to finish in their respective standings in the West and the East. But it's also true that Anthony Davis has this guy named LeBron James. And even though LeBron is just turned 40, he plays at a really high level. And it feels like there's a sort of a co-share, their co-stars and their value to the team. Maybe I need to let go of last year. I feel the same way about Brunson with Cat. Cat's exceptional. Cat's amazing. But if I put Brunson at 5 last year as an MVP candidate, and he's still playing at a really high level, am I just now suddenly just picking the best Knick every year because they're a really good team? For me, it's harder to riddle out than I know that Wemby is the factor for the Spurs not being the hot mess maybe a lot of us expected.
Is this even, I want to throw this past you too. Is this the last year that we're even having this conversation about is Wemby in the top 5 for MVP or all NBA? I think like after this year, Bill, yes. I think it's over. I think after this, it's just automatically just pencil him in.
And we're having this conversation because of an injury, obviously, to Luka Doncic. And I don't want to put this into the universe, but I don't think I'm breaking massive news here or creating a rift in the space-time basketball continuum to suggest that guys get hurt a lot these days. And there could be another player who is ahead of these guys in the order who could get hurt or miss the threshold. And then I think it's a lock that Wemby and Cat probably are suddenly both. Yeah, so at a minimum, this is the last time it's a debate. And it may not be a debate come March, wherever we are. If the Spurs, it's a big if. But if the Spurs are a top 6 team, or they're even fighting for that at the end of the year, let alone a play. If they're a playing team, I still think he gets the consideration he should. I'm with you. I think this is the beginning of the continuous reality that Wemby is always going to be one of the players that defines and shapes the league. And that'll be shown in a lot of ways, including probably continuous MVP votes, the way LeBron did for most of his tenure.
They are really ahead of the curve, the Spurs are. And this is a team that you flagged before the season when you said, hey, they could be a play-in team. And I said, whoa, let's settle down. I love Wemby too. But I think you're getting ahead of yourself. Bill, they're number 10 in the Western Conference right now, in a loaded Western Conference, basically same record as the Golden State Warriors. Warriors slightly ahead of them on percentage points here, but they're a game and a half up on the aforementioned Kevin Durant Phoenix Suns here. Now, again, if the Suns had Kevin Durant for more of the season than they had him, they project to be ahead of the Spurs. But look, this is a Spurs team that decided we're going to bring in Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, put some veterans around this kid, and like let Stephon Castle cook a little bit and Devin Vassell. This isn't like a loaded Spurs team. This is really a testament to how good Wemby has. You just talked me into it. I think he's got to be in the top 5. Forget Karl Anthony Towns. I'm putting you to the side.
And I like that. You're right. There's some veterans they brought in, but it's largely a young team. And if some of those young guys are able, sometimes young guys hit a wall, right? That happens. And so this team could cool off. But we saw the Rockets last year really at the end. The Rockets of this year began last season. And that's something that you flagged at the end of last year, where they made that push and almost were a playing team at the end of the season. Because sometimes young guys just take a while and they kind of click, right? It can take a minute for the NBA and what is expected for things to really click. If things click for Castle, for Vassell, for some of these guys, obviously they're clicking for Wemby in year 2. There's a world where if they're even a little bit better with Wemby playing next to him, this is a team that could play like the 10 seed or the 9 seed for the first 30 games, and they could play like the 5 or the 6 seed for the last 30 or 40 if things go well. So I'm very, very bullish on the Spurs.
We're buying all the Spurs stock. Just wait until De'Aaron Fox gets there. I'm sorry, Sacramento. We're going to take a quick break here. On the other side, I want to ask you one more thing on the other side about the MVP conversation, Bill. Are we sure it's Joker? I'm starting to have some questions about this. We'll discuss that. And also, we got the NBA All-Star voting returns, the first fan returns. We'll do that on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. We're going to get to the All-Star voting in just a second. I want to put a little bow on the MVP conversation that we're having here, Bill. We have the top 4 guys that are going to be in the MVP conversation: Joker and SGA and Giannis and Tatum. And I think for the majority of the season, we're approaching the halfway mark. The majority of the season, I have been very firmly that Joker's the guy. His numbers are undeniable. I still think he is, but is it closer than we thought here? Because BetOnline has SGA as the favorite as -110. I mean, Oklahoma City just beat the Clippers last night. Bill, they've won 13 in a row, 17 of the last 18. He is clearly the best player on the best team in the Western Conference, maybe the best team on maybe the best player on the best team, full stop. And Edwards called him the MVP of the NBA the other day when the Wolves lost to OKC, called him unguardable. What do you think? I mean, is he closer in this conversation than maybe we've given him credit for?
You are such a Joker guy that I'm a little shook.
I am.
That you're even present. This is like Romeo deciding to maybe break up with Juliet, or the old man deciding to hell with the sea. I mean, you're a Joker guy.
I'm also an OKC guy.
You are. It's the house divided against itself here. If I had to vote today, I would vote for Joker. I think. I mean, they're 4th in the West, and for me, those thresholds matter, which is really interesting in a crowded Western Conference. I subscribe to the Howard Beck as sort of the pioneer of this. You have to be in the top 4 to be considered. I think that's a reasonable part of the checklist, and they're on a little, 3-game win streak. But it's really close, and obviously there's a lot of games to go. So I do think the notion that SGA is as likely or in the neighborhood is as likely to be MVP as Joker right now, I think there's some legitimacy to that. I'll just say, in defense of your guy, his team isn't particularly good. I have really evolved my thinking on, we used to talk about the fact that he'd never played with and hasn't played with an all-star, former all-star, or all-NBA player. And the thinking was, but MPJ is going to get there, and Jamal Murray should be there. And I'm not sure that's right. I think maybe they have been a product and part of Joker's greatness, the way we've seen LeBron lift up people and Kobe lift up people and Jordan lift up people. And so that is absolute value. For me, it's Joker, but you're right. If Denver falls off a cliff where they finish, God forbid, 7, or SGA keeps doing what he's doing, it's going to be a really tough decision.
It's still Joker for me too, but yes, it is a house divided against itself over here, because I do love watching Oklahoma City, and they're such a fun team, and SGA is so good. The thing with Joker is, though, I mean, like, a career high 31 points per game, almost averaging a triple double. And he's also shooting a league high among qualified players from beyond the arc. Not a ton of volume there, but he's having a fantastic shooting season. So SGA has been unguardable, but he's really inching closer there. And for everybody, for all the hand wringing about what happens to the league after LeBron retires and Steph retires. I mean, I think that the NBA is in great shape. We talked about Wemby already, and you've got a guy in SGA who's got his whole career ahead of him and is now just really hitting full stride. Those two guys are going to be competing for MVPs for a while now.
This comparison's not perfect, but it struck me while you're talking. I think we've talked about the similarities in some ways between the Thunder and the Celtics, their depth, their ability to be outstanding offensively and defensively, the fact that both teams can switch most guys, and they're constructed in similar ways. SGA is a different player than Tatum, but I do think, like Tatum, he's the best player on the best team in his conference. But there's so many other guys in that team that are so good. And when I know, and the fact that SGA is doing this without Chet Holmgren, I think is really significant, because when that guy is around, he's a top 12, whatever he is, player in the game. But I do think it counts if we're talking incrementalism and just how hard these votes are going to be. I think SGA's got a better basketball team. He has more depth around him. He has more guys he can rely on. Sam Presti's done a markedly better job in his front office than the front office in Denver of surrounding their superstar with amazing players. SGA is being awesome with awesome guys, and Joker is carrying a bunch of dudes who are not living up to the expectations he set. And so I think that gives Joker a bit of an advantage over Shea.
Yeah, I think that's where I come down on this too. And you have a vote there, and we'll discuss it as the season goes along. You also have a vote. You're less excited about this in the NBA All-Star conversation. Now, we got the first fan returns back yesterday, Bill, and Joker leads the Western Conference front court, and SGA leads the Western Conference guards. Now, that is as expected, as is Giannis leading the front court in the East. There's some curious decisions here, though, Bill, by the fans. As you can see there, the leading vote getter in the Eastern Conference among guards is LaMelo Ball. Bill, I almost fell off my chair when I saw this. LaMelo Ball is a very good basketball player, but, he is kind of like, I don't know, like a TikTok video come to life on an NBA game. Like how did he, are there even this many Hornets fans? How is he leading the voting here?
Right. Did some super Hornets fan hack the system? I'm sure not NBA. And by the way, John hinted at the fact that I don't love the All-Star game the way that I should, but thank you to the NBA. Most of the time when I get those emails, I'm so excited. The official you're voting. I got this one. It was the obligatory. Yes, I will vote for. You know why the All-Star game annoys me? Because guys like LaMelo Ball can start in the All-Star game. I love LaMelo. I like LaMelo a lot more than you do. I think he's fun and he's interesting to watch. And when he's healthy, he's incredibly dynamic. And yes, he often thinks he's playing an individual sport, not a team sport. He forgets about the other four guys that are out there, and it doesn't really translate to winning. I like LaMelo. He's not even an All-Star for me. I mean, he's a starter. Give me a break.
Yeah, I did the conversation with Sam Quinn about would he even make the cut, 2 weeks ago? And we had him on the outside looking in. The three guys behind him are all better starting candidates than LaMelo Ball. And whether or not you have him making the All-Star game or not, if you have him in the All-Star game, I'm fine with that, depending on, where he falls in the pecking order. But Donovan Mitchell, Damian Lillard, and Jalen Brunson all have had better seasons and are much more worthy All-Stars than LaMelo Ball, who is just out there jazz riffing every time he goes out there, launching up, 23 pointers, and they lose by 20 every night.
I mean, Donovan Mitchell, are we forgetting, you and I aren't, is the best player on, by record, one of the absolute best teams in the NBA this year. Jalen Brunson is an absolute star. And Lillard's interesting because, this is a Bucks team that's been sort of up and down, and they've not been great again since they won the what is this thing, the in-season tournament. I mean, but like he's obviously a superstar level guy. All three of those guys are no-brainers to me, especially Mitchell and Brunson ahead of Ball. It just, and again, you're about to work me up because the All-Star, the changes, and it's not significant. And I go to this thing and it doesn't showcase the sport the right way. This is the stuff that drives me crazy about the NBA. Just cannot get this event right.
See, this is why I like discussing this with you, because I put the quarter in and wind you up and let you
Yeah.
go, and it's fantastic. A couple other things here that I want to get your reaction to the fans getting this completely wrong on, because some of they did get right. I mean, they did get Joker right at the top. They did get
Yes.
Giannis right at the top. They did get SGA right, but some other things that they didn't get right. And by the way, Franz Wagner getting some votes here also I think was a good thing. But some other ones that they got wrong. Evan Mobley, Bill, on the Eastern Conference front court is having an excellent season. You mentioned the Cavs being by record the best team in the NBA. He comes in at number 10. Evan Mobley at number 10. Ahead of him, Bill, Paul George and Joel Embiid. I know Sixers fans are crazy and there's stuff in the ballot box, but come on, what are we even doing here? And then in the Western Conference, Andrew Wiggins, who's had an okay season, he's been fine. I don't have any problems with Andrew Wiggins this year, but him coming in ahead of Domantas Sabonis, who's been good, and Jaren Jackson Jr., very quietly, I don't think people have realized with the injuries that the Memphis Grizzlies have had, Triple J isn't just an all-star for me, Bill. He's safely in the all-NBA conversation. He's been that good. So having Wiggins ahead of those guys and then Evan Mobley not getting enough love, what are we doing?
The irony of this and the way that it illustrates how this event needs a lot of work, including who's selected, is that on the day, or at least a 24-hour period where these vote tallies came out, Mobley was named the Eastern Conference Player of the Month. I mean, so whoever's writing these memos in the NBA office has to be like, all right, let me write the real one. All right, let me go to the fan total. Oh my God, all right, I gotta send this. I don't. Andrew Wiggins. I mean, come on.
Come on. All right. So, I mean, I guess this bears a little discussion here, right? Because as you mentioned, the All-Star game is like pretty broken. They changed the format this year. It's going to be 4 teams of 8, 3 teams of NBA players, and then the Rising Stars champion. They're going to have a little mini tournament. The NBA knows that this thing is broken, but the way that they're trying to do this is, it's divided up between the media vote and the fan vote and the players. So, I mean, shouldn't the fans have a little bit of say in, hey, like, we like these guys. I guess we really like LaMelo Ball.
I think you crushed it, especially with the little bit part. 10%? I mean, I understand the logic here is that you want the people that you're trying to engage to maybe have the most say in who's playing. I would just, you put a quarter me. I'm going to hear, sometimes I hear from these guys at the NBA league office. They're a little sensitive. I love you guys, but you're a little sensitive sometimes. Who's voting? Are we sure these are actual NBA fans? It's like one guy in Charlotte voting 431,000 times because he's really good at technology. I'm not convinced that diehard NBA fans or even casual fans who could be brought into the fold, which is really what the league is after, are the ones that are doing the voting here, because it's so off. And by the way, these things matter, as you know, for legacy, when guys retire, when guys are up for the Hall of Fame, when we're talking about careers. All-Star games are one of the things that everybody tallies. And this guy was an X-time All-Star. And it's just, these are not distributed anymore based on performance or the star power of these players.
This is why all NBA matters more, right? I mean, it matters more to guys' paychecks. It matters more for prestige because it's people like yourself and me who sit around and like only watch basketball all day, every day, who really care about this stuff, as opposed to the All-Star voting when you have some casuals come along and, you get a push notification, hey, vote for the All-Star game. And then, they're just doing it the second screening while they're hardly paying attention. But hopefully it'll be more fun this year. You're going to have a great time at the All-Star game. I can
can't
tell.
wait.
We're going to take a quick can't wait. Gonna take a quick break, and then on the other side, we've determined it's January 3rd, but we're still able to say Happy New Year, so we're gonna do some New Year's resolutions on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Just a reminder, you can also find us on YouTube. We're over there at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe. Little bell symbol tells you when we go live, you'll get notified. We're usually live Monday through Friday at noon Eastern. All right, Bill, New Year's resolutions could be for a player, could be for a team, could be for our show, could be anything. We left this super wide open. You start us off.
I like we're doing this because I'm not normally a huge resolutions guy, but it sort of rekindled my belief that this can be a thing. But I'm in. This has kind of got me believing. All right, I'm going to go with it's a combo. The Nets need to start losing again, and the Bucks need to start winning again. And this is connected to last night's game. The Nets had done a nice job losing some games after that trade and sort of the decision to unload some guys. Not so much for Milwaukee. They are 3-4 since winning the in-season tournament that they didn't really want to celebrate. So the Nets need to get back to business, and so to Milwaukee, get back to basics, guys. And for Brooklyn, that is not winning these games that they definitely want to lose.
The Nets have a Cam Johnson problem. He's good.
Yeah, they do.
He's having a really good season. They need to get him off of that roster in the same way that they needed to ship out Dorian Finney-Smith. They have to tell Cam Johnson that they're on a road trip. And then just give him the wrong directions or something, just turn the lights out.
Meet us at LaGuardia.
Yeah. Is anybody in there? He comes to the building and he knocks on the door. I got one for you that we're going to stay in New York here, and I'm going to make this resolution knowing full well that it will be immediately broken. All right. This one is for Tibbs and the Knicks. Tibbs, stop playing your guys so many minutes. Bill, they have four of the Knicks in minutes played are in the top 10 in the NBA this season. Mikal Bridges, number 1, most minutes played in the NBA. OG Anunoby, number 3, most minutes played. Josh Hart, number 5. And then Jalen Brunson, who had been outside the top 10, Bill, is now inside the top 10 at number 9. 4 guys, 4 of your 5 starters, only by the grace of God. I don't know what's happening with Karl Anthony Towns. Maybe he's faking it and saying, I'm a little winded, Tibbs. Please don't put me in. But Tibbs, man, we saw what happened last year when OG Anunoby wasn't available to you in the postseason. You still ended up beating the Sixers, but you would have gone potentially much farther if you had had a healthy team. So yes, please scale back the minutes just a little bit here.
You are correct, but this is the equivalent of asking a fish not to swim. I mean, he's gonna load up. Let me add to this too, and this might be across purposes. My New Year's resolution for the Knicks would be keep up the defense because they've been great and they're on this winning streak. Mm-hmm. But going back to December 15th when this began, they have the 4th best offense in the NBA over that stretch. They have the 4th best defense in the NBA over that stretch too. And part of the reason they've been on this tear is they've gotten back to playing the kind of defense that Tibbs wants. So do that, but with less minutes from some of your guys so that it can last.
You bring up a good point. I mean, they've been so good. I'm sure it's hard for Knicks fans to go, hey, Tibbs, change your ways. You've won 9 in a row. You're the 3rd in the Eastern Conference. You're only a game back of the Boston Celtics. But you want this team to be – we've seen proof of concept here. This is a good team. You want them to be healthy in the postseason because then anything can happen. All right, give me another one.
All right, mine is for Anthony. Some of these new people go and they go to the holidays and they don't get along with family members and they fight, but then they realize they love each other, but it's too late. The family in Minnesota, newly formed, I need Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle to just find a way to get along. And there's been some reports about some tension. And I don't know if you saw this, but Ant had a quote yesterday after the game, I think it was yesterday, where he basically said, I get double teamed too much and I don't know what to do and I don't have any help. And it's a sort of long conversation with the press. It sounds like he's talking about the fact that he gets doubled too much. What I heard is I don't have Karl Anthony Towns. I don't have offensive help. And this Julius Randle guy is not as good as the other guy. They are stuck together for now. They're going to have to figure it out. And I would love for a resolution for Ant and Randle to just realize for the moment you need each other, whatever your frustrations, put them aside and get to the business of trying to play together the way you need to, because this is still a team that's got a ceiling that's I think, interesting if they can put whatever their issues are aside, on or off the court.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing, trying to figure out how to play together. The other one is, it's something that you and I discussed earlier this season. Maybe the resolution, and I know it's not going to happen, but you should at least think about it if you're Chris Finch. Julius Randle off the bench, Naz Reid into the starting lineup. Stagger those guys. Maybe you're still closing with Julius Randle, but man, the offense just grinds to a halt whenever the ball goes into him. But I like your New Year's resolution for them. I got one more for you, and this is for us, and it's going to be not as hard for me as it will be for you because you just cannot quit this stupid team. We're going to talk about them later when we're on CBS Sports HQ Spotlight. But my resolution for both of us is don't get suckered into the Sixers. Every year, and I had to learn this lesson the hard way. I think you're still learning this lesson the hard way. They're 13-19. They had won 4 in a row, Bill. They beat the Celtics on Christmas Day. Then since then, they lost. They beat the Jazz in a night fight. Then they lost to the Kings, when the Kings had a 15-0 run the other night. And then they got smoked by the Warriors last night in a game where they lost by 34. They're on the outside of the play-in looking in. Bill, we have to quit this team. It's like
John,
smoking.
one year I pretended I was going to give up bourbon, and that lasted about one day. This is similar.
Okay.
I want to give up the Sixers hope. I want to give up being tantalized and seduced when they play well once every 4 games. I'm not going to. We're going to do podcasts, and I'm going to be all excited and say, let's plan the parade. If only AB and you're right. It's a good resolution. You're not wrong. I can do some things. I don't think I can quit the Sixers just yet, because it should be possible for this team to do some things.
It should be. They're 6-3 when Tyrese Maxey, PG, and Embiid play. And you think about it, you're like, wow, 6-3 sounds pretty good. That's only 9 games. 9 games is not a lot of games. You need to get them out there more if they're actually going to do anything. I'm not buying it. I'm going to try to quit them this season, even though you're right. We're not going to be able to pull it off. Quick break, and then on the other side, we'll wrap up the show as we generally do with Team of the Night. I got a good one for you, Bill. That's coming up on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc, wrapping up a show on a Friday here, as we generally do with Team of the Night. Bill, you go first.
Give me the Boston Celtics. Look, they've been a little bit overshadowed this year by Cleveland, and they haven't been as dominant maybe as we expected. They're still on pace for a 60-win season. Now, they're not the only team this year, but there's only been one 60-win season in the last 3 years, and that team, the Boston Celtics from last year. They had a nice win against the Timberwolves yesterday that led to more drama in that Timberwolves locker room that we talked about a little bit in our New Year's resolution. So I just want to give Boston a shout out. I know it's the same old story. I know they're the defending champions. I know it's not a surprise, but even though they're not the dominant story in the NBA this year, they're probably still the best team in the East. And we may look back and remember that they're the best team in all of the NBA.
Yeah, and last night too, without Kristaps Porzingis and without Jaylen Brown, and they've had some of those wins this season. They did hit a little. It's nitpicking, right? Because they're the defending champions, and I had texted you and said, hey, they're playing better after stumbling just a little bit. I talked about this with Sam yesterday. So they're putting up the most threes in the NBA, and they're making the most threes in the NBA. But in terms of percentage, they've fallen off. Last year, one of the best three-point shooting teams in the NBA. This year, outside of the top third, I think they're around 13th, right? On nights when their shot doesn't fall, they are kind of beatable. So that's
there's some variance there.
This is the way we're going to play.
Yeah. There's going to be some variance. I mean, they're not going to win. If they win the whole thing, they're not going to go 16-1 because there's going to be some variance there.
Yeah, they've decided Missoula ball. We're going to play defense. We're going to put up more shots than you. When our shot is falling or even getting close to league average, you're in trouble. You're never going to beat us. But if it doesn't fall, then we are a little bit more beatable than we were previously. Bill, my team of the night. Sometimes team of the night isn't always a positive, right? Sometimes we do team of the night and it's a little tongue in cheek. But this one, I mean sincerely. It's the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat last night, they lost a game to the Indiana Pacers, and they knew that Jimmy Butler was not happy. And they said to Jimmy Butler, go ahead, Jimmy, go to the podium. Bill, what were they? I want to thank them. It's tremendous content for you and I and for everybody else who covers the NBA. But I would have tackled that man. There's no way I'd let him near a microphone.
And the head PR guy for the Miami Heat is, I believe, a former Marine who looks like it, John. He could tackle him if he was so inclined. He's wanted to tackle me a couple of times. Look, I think one of the things about this is that that's such a good call that he had to go to that he went to the podium. Who's telling Jimmy Butler no? Right? In this weird sort of head games playing chicken between him and Pat Riley. I don't know this. I'll ask because that's pretty funny. I used to cover that team. It's a good observation by you. My guess would be he goes, I'm going to the podium. And they go, not necessary. And he went to the podium. It's probably not
and he went to the podium anyway. It's not necessary. Yeah. And he said, man, it might be necessary that I do this. Necessary. I just can't believe that they've gotten to well, you know what? Yes, I can. Yes, I can believe that it's gotten to this because it's gotten to this with Jimmy Butler everywhere he's gone, right? I mean, it was always going to end badly for Jimmy Butler in the Miami Heat. So Godspeed to the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler, and Godspeed to our show. That's going to do it for us today. We're going to be back at it on Monday. We're live on YouTube on Monday at noon Eastern. Come find us over there at Beyond the Arc CBS. Be sure to read everything that Bill writes on CBSSports.com. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Reiter, I'm John Gonzalez. We thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and have a great weekend.